So in this planting setup, I actually was so excited. I was able to put my first plants in, or seed, I should say, of the season. And in here, I have 3 different plants growing. I have onion, carrot, and radish. And you can see I did my little hack using my painter's stick. And I wrote on the stick exactly what I planted in there. The zone is there. And I don't know if you could tell, but I actually plant using sort of like mounds. So you'll see like right here, there's a mound, there's a mound, there's a mound. And on this side, there's 3 different mounds. So I have 3 different types of vegetable growing in there, and I have it growing in 6 different mounds. Another gigantic raised bed on the deck setup is here, and in this one I have cabbage and I have bell pepper. I am trying to grow a different variety of cabbage. It's called, I believe, a Chinese cabbage, and it reminds me a little bit of like a mixture of Savoy, and I'm trying to think of that other cabbage that they sell sometimes at the grocery store. Or is that a lettuce? It's like white and or yellowish, and it sort of reminds me of the same thing. Actually, I don't think you'll be able to see the picture because the sun is very bright. Oh, you can see it sort of. There you go. And even a mixture of romaine, but it has such an amazing flavor. So my hope is that I end up with 3 rows. You see 1, 2, 3 rows of that, and the last 2 rows are the bell pepper. And the bell pepper seed is seed that I actually harvested from bell pepper that I grew last year, as well as bell pepper that we purchased from the grocery. So it'll be interesting to see if that grows. And here, yes, I'm doing it with a fancy slant. I have another planting bed, and this one is not ready yet. I'm still, working on it to break down the, I call them additions or enhancements that we added to the soil, which are really the scraps and things like that that would be in the compost. So after this probably has another week, or maybe a week and a half, but definitely a week or 2 maybe, this should be ready to receive some seed. And since we're in zone 6A, there are obviously a limited amount of types of plants that we could grow at this time of year. Obviously, if we were in a warmer zone, we could plant everything. Like I know some people in Georgia, and they're planting they could plant whatever they want at this particular time. And even some folks that we know in Virginia. And I would like to say hello to Skinny Boy Randy. You rock. He's a crazy gardener. And the cool thing is he also is like, why do we have to make this complex and complicated? And why do we have to have our land looking like some miscellaneous abandoned nursery with stuff just grown all over the place? And, our yards are neat. Well, mine is anyway. Neat, tidy. Everything has a place. And everything looks purposeful, and you could do that whether it's a container garden system that you're doing in your house, on your deck, whatever, or if you're doing like raised beds like these, or raised beds out in your yard. The one thing I would say with a raised bed that you're putting in your yard or anywhere else, make sure it's high enough, because one of the things I notice, which is really like, what's the purpose of a raised bed? It's to help protect the plants most of the time from wildlife, because a rabbit can't hop up 3 feet, but it can hop a couple feet up, and especially a foot up. And that's one of the issues I find with some of the raised bed planters, if you will, that people are either making themselves or purchasing, is that they're probably a foot high. And technically, they should be several feet high. And also, make them high enough so that you don't have to overly bend and ruin your joints and things like that. Because if you do that, you will not be able to garden for, you'll garden for a while, but then it'll come to a point where you can't do it. And there's, I think his name is Self-Reliance. He's a guy out of Australia. Love, 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 love everything that he does. And what he has are raised beds that they have to be at least 4 feet high, maybe even like 4.5. I don't think they're higher than that. And they're perfect. He also makes sure that the beds are not too wide, because if they're wide, you have to step in them, and you really shouldn't have to step in them. You should be able to, as far as your arm can reach across, that's how far across it should be on either side. So take your arm length, multiply it by 2. That's how wide your raised bed should be. And it should be at least, I believe, 3 feet in height. And if it's not, then I don't understand what the purpose of raised bed gardening is, because you really don't need a raised bed. You could just plant the stuff in the ground, and you could even mound the dirt up if you want to. So if you are really trying to do true raised bed gardening, just something to consider. So we're coming into the end of the video. I know, so sad, right? 2 things. One, you can see how that little spade shovel works so perfectly in these raised beds, because it's not huge, it's not clunky. It's so easy to dig a hole, so easy to kind of put to the side. And that has been in the family for, oh my God, it must be like at least 60, 70 years. So it's not something that you have to go back and rebuy every year. But when you do the raised bed gardening, you really don't need a lot. Get that tool that I showed you from, even in the raised beds, I mix the soil up using that green tool that I showed you. I use my spade shovel, and I have 2 hand tools that I use, and that's pretty much it. Obviously add gloves if you want to. But I'm showing you these containers because something exciting is happening. So those of you who were with me last season, you know that I experimented with growing potatoes from organic miniature potatoes that I purchased from the grocery. And whoa, we had like, I'm going to say 5 or 6 potatoes from one of those. So this year I'm going to grow them in this bucket. And you can see I turned it upside down because we're going to drill holes in it so it has drainage, and it will sit inside of another sort of like a dish thing, and it will be out here on the deck so that it has drainage, obviously. And I will show you guys my method for growing the potatoes in there. You can't just add dirt, throw some potatoes, and it doesn't work like that. But it is easy. I've streamlined it. I did it. You can do it. And then the other thing is, yes, what do you see? A very, very large container here, because I am setting up 2 more setups for growing food out here. And right now we have 3 that are actively going, 1 that's kind of in the process, and then we will have 2 more setups. And honestly, I mean, this deck is huge. I could add a lot more, but I keep saying, oh, I think that might be it, but I honestly think I'll probably add at least another 1. So in this particular season, we'll have 3 setups going, and you can see the areas where the holes are going to be drilled into this particular container are marked for my husband to drill them tomorrow morning when he gets home. And if any of you remember last year, I talked about, how I came up with this method. And what it is I have a dolly underneath that is as wide as the bottom of the container. And that's important because of the weight, because I can't lift one of these up by myself. And my husband and daughter struggle to lift one of these up. So it's I don't know. I'm going to say is there 100 pounds of dirt in there? There has to be. There's a lot. And also, you can't tell by looking at this camera angle, but they're taller than what you think they are. And also, they're wider than what you might perceive. And then what I did is I took, as you can see, the container this is the one that I have to break down a little bit more as far as composting. But what happens is you sit the container with your dirt in it inside of the container that you actually, that's not true. Inside of a container that has no holes in it. So this is a container that has holes in it so that the water can drain out. Then what you do is you take another empty container that's that exact same size and you line it with bricks. And I actually have some of the bricks here that I'm going to be using tomorrow. And you line the bricks in the empty container and then you sit this container inside of it. And that allows the water to drain so that your soil and plants are not just sitting in a watery soup. And then what we do is, like, if we have heavy rain, we go out the next day after it's not raining and we, lift this container out, take the container with the water in it and just dump it. Because obviously these containers got rained on, they don't need any more water in them. In the winter, what I do is I take that container that holds the water, or is the water reserve, and I flip it on top of this with the dirt and everything in it. I put the bricks on top of that, and that's what will sit there throughout the winter until it's time to open them up and use them. So that's the setup, and if you want me to show you that like on video, let me know. I can do that. But thank you guys for joining. Remember that your health is your wealth, and without your health you have absolutely nothing. So please, please, please take care of yourselves and remember that your health is your wealth. Again, I can't say it enough, because this is a really good time of year to get out, have some fun, enjoy nature, listen to the wind chimes. And also, if you guys, have any questions about gardening, or if you want to see me do something, or if you have ideas for things I should grow, please let me know, and be well.